I'm here to talk with everyone today regarding the carryover. I am CFC certified in flexible compensation by the Employers Council on Flexible Compensation. Today I'm flying solo thanks to the IRS waiting for the absolute craziest, busiest time of the year to make this announcement. I'm very excited about the next slide because the subject today is something that is going to create a lot of excitement and help a lot of employees. Now, today we're going to talk about the Health FSA $500 carryover option. And carryover is the official name. So if you hear me say rollover, or Cary Grant, or Harry Grant, or Harry Carey, or any of those people, you know I'm referring to the $500 carryover. I want to remind everyone that you're in listen-only mode. If you wish to submit questions, please type these in the text box, and we'll get to your questions, or as many as we can, at the end of the presentation. As always, you should have received the slide presentation in advance. I don't see any questions right now, so it looks like we're ready to go and everyone's signed in. So let's get started with where this all started, which was back on Friday, September 13th. The Treasury published Notice 2013-54, which preserves all Health Flex spending accounts that are considered accepted benefits, but eliminates an employer's ability to use a standalone Health FSA or other tax-favored arrangements, including premium reimbursement arrangements or HRAs, health reimbursement arrangements, to help employees pay for the individual health policies on a tax-free basis. Now, good news, if you have a off-plan year, you're allowed to continue to pay for employees' individual health insurance until the benefit plan renews. So, prior to this guidance, assuring a health FSA was classified as an accepted benefit for purposes of HIPAA was important for two primary reasons. So COBRA continuation was not offered when the account was overspent, and to avoid HIPAA portability requirements. But now, in addition to assuring health FSAs are swept into the W-2 reporting rules, FSA plans must also meet HIPAA accepted benefit rules to be offered in compliance with the new Affordable Care Act requirements. Generally, this means health FSAs must meet two conditions to be offered. Only individuals eligible, and please make a note of this part, only individuals eligible for employer-provided major medical coverage can be offered the health FSA. Employers with health FSAs must have an underlying ACA-compliant group health insurance plan. BeneFLEX normally advises employers to set up their plan documents to only offer FSAs to those eligible for health insurance. An amendment will be required for any company's plan document if you don't have your plan set up that way. So you are FSA eligible if you are eligible for the company health insurance. You do not have to take it. In addition, the health FSA must limit the maximum payable to 2 times the participant's salary reduction, or if greater, the participant's salary reduction plus $500. What does that mean? It's a fancy way, or simply you can say that health FSAs can include employers' contributions of $500 up to, or a dollar-for-dollar match of each participant's election. I want to repeat that. Simply that the health FSA can include employer contributions or seed monies of $500, or the employer can do a dollar-for-dollar match of each participant's election. Cafeteria plans may no longer reimburse individually owned insurance policies. I want to expand on my opening remarks. This may not affect most employers. However, for the few employers sponsoring cafeteria plans that allow for participants to pay their individually owned policy premiums with pre-tax dollars, the IRS and Treasury just eliminated this as an option. The reason for the change is to discourage employers from eliminating group coverage and to make it impossible for employers to send their employees to the public exchange and perhaps reimburse them with tax-free dollars for their cost for exchange coverage. Employers need to be aware that any reimbursement or payment of individual health coverage, whether it be inside or outside the exchange, cannot be made with tax-advantaged funds. And remember what I said in the beginning, if you have a plan like that in place and you're off plan year, you can run that along until you renew your plan. This may be the one most understood ACA provision issued to date, and that is a mouthful for it to be the most misunderstood because there's a lot of confusion. So the amendment for the fiscal year cafeteria plan. To date, this applies only to employers with non-calendar year plans. Example, July 1 through June 30. Employees who wish to seek coverage on the exchange but would otherwise be prevented from doing so because their elections are generally irrevocable for the plan year can be allowed to make a change if the employer amends their plan to allow this additional change in status event. A couple of points to remember, because the employer shared responsibility rules, the guidance applies only to applicable large employers. These are employers who are employed an average of at least 50 full-time employees based on hours of service during the preceding calendar year. Now, let me repeat that because this is an off-plan year guidance, and it's only if you're going to open up the plan to allow employees to change their premium-only plan election, not their health FSA. Many of us in the industry believe that this same type of relief is going to be brought forward to treat small employers the same way, but it's not been announced yet. Why would this be a critical amendment? ACA was written to assure that employees and individuals could purchase insurance coverage through state insurance exchanges. Allowing employees to change cafeteria elections mid-year allows maximum flexibility for the employees. Premium-only plan changes are the only thing we're talking about in this point. 90-day waiting period. Health plan years that start on or after January 1, 2014 may not contain a waiting period for entry into the plan that exceeds 90 days, 60 days in California, plus other states may vary. But 90 days is the rule that you cannot exceed in order for the health FSA to retain their status as an accepted benefit. They can only be made available to employees who are also eligible for underlying ACA-compliant health coverage. Health FSAs must assure that their waiting periods are no less than that of their underlying health coverage. So employers should be sure that their waiting periods for the premium only and the health FSA portion of the employer's cafeteria plans mirrors the waiting period for the underlying health insurance plan. Now, in the case of DCAP, dependent care, the waiting period is not set. There's a lot of flexibility there, and you can keep your DCAP however you want it to be. It's the health FSA that we're talking about must match up to the health insurance plan. If the cafeteria plan doc does not currently reflect these terms, an amendment to the cafeteria plan can be adopted that states the eligibility and entry date into the cafeteria plan are the same as the underlying health insurance plan. This ensures no disconnect if the waiting period changes in the health insurance. If BeneFLEX administers your plan, contact us. You need to discuss these changes. And if we don't administer your plan, contact us so we can discuss making these changes and do your plan documents for you. So, amendment action steps. Remember, and these are some possible amendment action steps. I just talked about the guidelines, so this is the possible amendment action steps that could come out of those last two slides. Remember, if you're off plan year only and you need to amend to allow a one-time qualifying event for employees to enroll in exchange and opt out of current health insurance plan and pop portion of the cafeteria, not health FSA, you've got to make this amendment. And the other possible amendment action might be the health FSA and pop. You may need to amend your plan to adjust the waiting period to not exceed 90 days. So the FSA, what a long journey. This rule has been in place for 3 decades. That's right, we were all babes and we were not around when this came out. I'm lying a little bit. The carryover is great news, but it's not a complete surprise. For the past 3 years, BeneFLEX, the ECFC, and many other groups lobbied the IRS and encouraged them to modify the use it or lose it. This, combined with everybody out there listening that used our partner website, Save My ASA, played a big part of this. It was a true industry effort. Legislative and regulatory initiatives were done. And if you put it in a use it or lose it historical context, it included, the use it or lose it started out with the IRS being afraid that employees would hide money tax-free. And it's been that way for a long time, and it wasn't until 2005, after significant public pressure, that the IRS indicated or made a change, and they adopted the grace period. Now, the grace period was optional, as is the carryover, but the grace period was brought into play with Notice 2005-42. And I cannot believe that was 8 years ago. I was standing in front of many of you, or we were doing the webinars talking about how the grace period would work and how it would impact your employees and what a great opportunity it was. Well, the Affordable Care Act came out, and that brought with it the $2,500 limit on salary reductions for the FSA. Now, everybody said, no, wait a minute. If we've got a limit on our FSA, you can't be worried about employees hiding large amounts of tax-free money. So the IRS solicited input with Notice 2012-40, and they got an overwhelming majority of comments that favored modification, surprise, surprise. And those inputs led us to the October 31st trick or treat, and for once it was a treat when we finally got our carryover. So thanks to all of you that played a part in doing a lot of the work on this carryover for Notice 2013-71. In a nutshell, it allows optional adoption of $500 or less carryover of a health FSA, not decap. There's no change in decap. Now, and the reason that decap is not included is decap is not a problem, because it's easy to change your dependent care elections, because if your daycare needs or expenses change, you can change those elections during the year. That's your change in status qualification for daycare. For health FSA, those change in status rules are much tighter. So the health FSA, this carryover $200, $500 or less carryover, it does not reduce your $2,500 salary reduction amount. The carryover to be put in place must be uniformly available. Everyone has to have the $500 carryover or not. Everyone has to have the grace period or not for the health FSA. You can't let your employees pick and choose. And so this carryover, you do it, that's in lieu of having the grace period in place. So we need to talk about what is the impact of choosing one over the other. So this carryover could be effective for 2013. And let's talk about 2013, 2014. Well, let's focus on 2013 right now because you need to make a quick decision because daylight is burning on this plan year. It must be announced before the end of the year. You must amend your plan before the end of the plan year, beginning in 2014. If you have a grace period, you must amend the plan before the end of the year to eliminate the grace period of 2013. So let me clarify that because they're saying different years that you can amend plans, and we think if you want to do it in 2013, you would just do it all at once. So for 2013, if you want to put the carryover in place, the grace period must be amended before 12/31/2013. If you amend your carryover, you can do that anytime up to December 31, 2014. We think if you're going to do the grace period and get rid of it in 2013, let's do the carryover at the exact same time. Now, the last little bullet there, you might have to address any non-code legal constraints. If you're going to make this change for a carryover in 2013, the reason we want to talk about the pros and cons is because those non-code legal constraints, you have employees that could bring a lawsuit if they lose some money because they have more than $500 in their account. So, should you do it for 2013 or 2014? Either way, it's a huge opportunity. A huge opportunity for employees. No more fear of use it or lose it. Everyone should participate. Even invincibles, those young, healthy guys, that's what we wish we all were, or gals, that have some out-of-pockets, why wouldn't they put $500 in case they have some expenses? Because it carries over. There's no rush for spending at the end of the plan year, unless you have more than 500 less, you'd want to spend down to that number. So there's no rush for spending at the end of the plan year or the grace period. So employees are more likely to participate or participate at a higher rate. And it's a huge opportunity for employers. It's exciting and it's simple. It's a benefit enhancement. It increases plan flexibility with choice of carryover or grace period. There is low or no cost due to FICA savings. And widespread participation equals increased satisfaction. Options and implications for employers to consider. Only one of the options can be applied to a given year. Switch to or addition of carryover requires a plan amendment. So your first thing to consider is to decide on grace period versus carryover. One or the other. Can't do both, but you can choose to do neither. and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, because I don't know why you would, because these are things that let your employees, excuse me, take full advantage of their FSA. So a carryover option can be implemented now for the 2013 plan year, but 2013 employees may have made their elections based on the grace period. So the second thing to consider, decide on a time frame for the change to carryover or to add the grace period. Make that decision based on the carryover in 2014. That's going to lead to fewer forfeitures and higher re-enrollments for 2014. Carryover in 2014 may increase participation and may impact election amounts. So that third bullet point, educate your employees on the chosen plan that you pick. So, carry, which means carryover, how to decide in 2013 or 2014. Now what I'm showing here is the summary page, and I showed that because that also included the definitions, because we have gone to a new reporting system with the enhancement of our software, but it's the detail you're going to want to look at on the monthly year-to-date report. So what we want to do, you're going to look at the account balance detail report. I have circled the medical FSA available balance, and I've also circled the cash balance. You're going to really only look at the available balance because that's the amount that's available in the FSA for the employees to roll over. And this column, if you go to the detailed with available balance, you want to look for all employees who have $500+ in their account. Now I went ahead and circled the cash balance in dependent care because this time of year you might want to look at your monthly year-to-date report, the account balance detail report, to see how many employees, how much money they have left. Just to remind them to look at their account balances on the website, the employee portal that we have available, and you want to make sure that they're going to use up those funds. So this time of year, some details and survey facts we looked up. On average, most companies have 15 to 20% employees with $500 more plus more balance in their accounts. Now that statistic seems a little high to me. I know I blew through my $2,500 by July of this year, but that's what the survey balance said. If you change in 2013, be aware you could hurt some of your employees. We suggest, and again it's your decision to make, we suggest starting the carryover in 2014, but spread the word now so employees can maximize their elections for 2014. Now the guidance says if you have already closed your 2014 election for the Health FSA but would like to adopt the carryover option, you can take your plan year, that if it doesn't start till January 1 of 2014, and you can reopen that election. And this would allow employees to add or open an FSA account in 2014. So we've revised the FSA enrollment kit for employers and employees, and we added some new materials to make this available for assistance. If you announce 2014 carryover, we can send the supporting marketing materials right away. So some ways that BeneFLEX supports you. Hopefully we send out comprehensive and clear compliance updates. You can go to our resource center on our website. There is no charge for the plan amendments. We have sample employee communications, and the staff also says you can consult with our sales and customer service team because we have the technology and processing available right now to execute any plan changes. You know, I wonder why the staff didn't list these engaging webinars that I do as a way to educate and to get these plans in place. Maybe they just don't like my witty repertoire. All right, so plan amendment and SMM to include the carryover. All right, so we have the flexible spending account. We have a summary of material modifications, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. The bottom line is we're ready right now to do your plan document amendment, your SMM, your summary of material modifications, and send you the educational pieces. But wait an FSA minute. What about some other carryover administrative considerations? All right. It must be, for the carryover amount, it must be coordinated with the run-out period. Carryover determined after any run-out period for claims, which is normally 90 days. So we're going to have to let your run-out and pay those claims that you have incurred be ran through the system before we know the amount of carryover you're going to have. You have an ordering rule. That's going to be your current year claims versus current year salary reduction first, and then the carryover is issued. What that means, I think that's a difficult way to say, if you're spending your money for the year where you put your carryover in place, we're going to use your election and those claims from that year first, and then you get into your carryover dollars. Now, it's important that you understand this carryover is indefinite. Unless an employee terminates, that carryover can go to 14, it can go to 15, it can go to 16. It doesn't double every time and triple. It's the same $500, and you can never carry over more than $500. It could be capped at less than $500, but we scratch our head and say, why would you? This is a real opportunity to make the FSA that much more user-friendly so your employees can maximize their benefits. So the carryover creates some potential impact on HSA eligibility. Under IRC 22.3, individuals with non-accepted health coverage are not HSA eligible. Carryover would generally preclude HSA eligibility if you're in a health FSA. For example, excuse me, like the grace period did, if you were going to an HSA and you were in a grace period, if you had any money left over, it took 3 months for the grace period to run out before you could get in any funds into your health savings account. And a carryover is for the entire year. So if you're looking at moving to an HSA, please make sure you educate your employees that if you have the grace period, they got to spend all that money so that they can get into the HSA on January 1. Or if you put the carryover in place, since that's for a year, you need to educate them to spend down to 0 also, so there's no carryover so they can get into their health HSA. Now, existing IRC 22.3 guidance, like I just said, I'm repeating myself, I apologize, would allow eligibility for those with a 0 balance on the last day of the plan year. So to repeat, if you're going from a health FSA into a health savings account, you've got to get that down to a 0 balance if you have the grace period or carryover into place. Now, some possible workarounds, and let me emphasize this, subject to agency guidance. These are not yet put in play, but we think it makes sense for the IRS to allow a waive over of the carryover. Now, we thought the same thing for the grace period, but they never put that into play. So common logic might not come into play, but a possible workaround might be to allow a waiver of the carryover, or my favorite would be if they would allow you to convert a carryover to a limited purpose FSA. Now, right now that's not in place because we have many employers that want to do a grace period rollover into a limited purpose FSA, and that's not allowed. So we hope that they would do that, but right now you need to spend your dollar amounts down to zero if you're looking at an HSA for next year and you have either the grace period or the carryover in place. Weighing grace period versus a carryover, and there's some pros and cons. I think there's an advantage to the grace period in 2013 if the employees made their elections based on that. Because for 2013, the employees might have some big expenses still to come up, and the carryover is capped at $500. So if you leave the grace period in place for 13, they can spend any funds that they have in January, February, and March, 2.5 months, if that's how you set up your plan document, and that's our recommendation. Employees made elections with the grace period in place as a fallback. Now, the advantage, I believe, to putting the carryover into 2014 and maybe getting rid of your grace period would be the carryover duration is not limited. It can roll over from 1 year to the next, and a larger election with the $500 carryover option is more than likely to happen. An example, if you have $1,000 medical expenses that you know you're going to incur, why wouldn't you add another $500 to save the taxes and put it in the place in case you needed it, and it could carry over? It would be a higher election amount, and it would be an extra $500 for unexpected medical expenses. Everyone should do this, in my opinion. I mean, and everyone needs to make a decision based on their needs and their abilities. But if you figure your medical expenses and add $500 to that because of the carryover, that way you have it and you don't have to worry about use it or lose it. It's there if you need it. If it rolls over, you're in good shape. That $500 is an extra $150 on average for the employees in additional tax savings. If you take that times a company with 100 employees, that's $15,000 in employee savings. And the employer, using those same numbers, is going to save an additional $3,825 in FICA tax. And I'm only using the $500 carryover. You can elect up to $2,500 if you're new to the plan. So I can't emphasize enough how passionate I feel that there's a real advantage here to help employees that have been afraid of the use it or lose it. Get them involved, because I found so many employers that have done seed money into the FSA, their participation has grown in leaps and bounds, because once employees get into it, they're looking for every way possible to run money through that program. Now, to implement your carryover, you are going to want to send your request to salessassistant@BeneFLEXHR.com. There were a couple of slides that went out with the wrong email address in there, so I'm going to make sure that you have the right one. It says salessassistant@BeneFLEXHR.com. Your screen you're looking at is correct. If you send in your email and say, I want to do this for 13, I want to do this for 14, we will send you the amendment checklist. We'll send you the SMM, the summary of material modifications, that you will hand out to each of your employees, telling them what's happening, and we'll include marketing materials to promote the carryover. So we tried to make this as simple as possible. We did this because we think it's so important that you get in this if this makes sense for you. So some things we're still waiting on. There's some areas that some guidance clearance is going to be needed, and it's a little hazy or fuzzy. We don't know all the details yet. Carryover is available for those in the plan on the last day of the year. Even if you do not elect an FSA for the next year, that carryover is available. So that carryover, would that continue in COBRA? Would it just be an automatic election into the FSA, even if you didn't elect it? We're not sure. What is that COBRA premium going to be if it's handled through COBRA and carried over? That's why we're going to need more guidance. Absent a COBRA election carryover is not available for terminated employees. You can see we face a lot of clarity to come, especially in the COBRA area. No permitted election changes due to carryover during the year. Changes may be possible if prior to the first day of the plan year. So what does that mean? If you are in the middle of your plan year and you put the carryover in place, that doesn't mean you can change your health FSA election. But if your plan year starts on January 1 of 2014 and you want to open that election back up to get your employees in there to take advantage of this, yes, you can. So, a little housekeeping. The 2014 parking and transit limits came out recently. We sent this out in a BeneFLEX, but I thought I'd go ahead and mention the COLA, the cost of living adjustments. The monthly limit on the amount that may be excluded from an employee's income for qualified parking benefits is $250 for 2014. That's a $5 increase for the 2013 limit of $245. A little bad news, the combined monthly limit for transit passes and van pooling expenses for 2014 has been taken down to $130. That's a $115 decrease from the 2013 limit. Now, I do want to make a note. The substantial decrease in the combined monthly limit for transit parking and van pooling expenses is due to the expiration of the rule of parity. The IRS put the rule of parity in place temporarily, and it made the combined limit for transit passes and van pooling expenses the same as parking for 2012 and 2013. At this time, it's uncertain if Congress is going to extend this rule. I do want to make a announcement here. The FSA COLA has not been announced or been put in place for 2014. So your $2,500 medical health limit for the FSA is still in place. A lot of employers said, you know, if they made a $5 change, I don't know that I would make the change because the plan year, you know, was so close and everything, and you got to do another plan amendment. So no FSA health change. It's $2,500. And dependent care is $5,000. Dependent care is $5,000. Now, at this time, we are going to take questions from the audience. Please submit your questions via the text message box. Any questions we do not get to will be addressed afterwards. A Q&A document will be posted with the recording of this webinar on our website by Wednesday or Thursday of this week. We have done 2 webinars now, So we hope that you've been able to take advantage of those. I do want to take a drink of water and read this next slide to you. The new FSA option, we think it really changes everything. We're very excited about it. You know, there's a statistic that says 80% of employees that declined the FSA did it due to the use it or lose it rule. You know, they said in the survey that they felt they could not forecast unknown medical expenses, so they did not get into the program because of the use it or lose it. This fixes that problem. Everyone should do $500 minimum. And we like to call the use it or lose it rule the new FSA use it or rollover rule of $500.